Say hello.
Hello, Daddy.
We're going to go take a ride, right? We're going to go around Staten Island. All right, let me fix this in there better. Okay, let's switch this around. Okay, we're going to hit a different part of the island today. Hopefully this thing stays put. You ready?
Go.
Let's go. Anyway, it's a couple of days. I got a cigar in my mouth. You got to excuse me here. It's a couple of days after Halloween. JoJo can't sleep. I'm awake. It is almost 3 in the morning, 2:52 in the morning. So I got to mail a letter, and then we're going to take a ride to the other end of Staten Island. Look at this. It's very windy tonight. Garbage pails all over the street. First of all, the garbage trucks just came, so there's a lot of empty pails. And they're going to be blowing all over the place. They're like 2 days late, a day and a half late. For whatever reason. I guess they don't like the idea of the new mayor. Whatever. Anyway. A friend of mine asked me about anything about ghost stories. If I ever saw a ghost, or if I knew any stories, and actually I do. There were 2 stories that, I don't know if they circulated in my family, but my mother told me when I was very young. And she repeated it a few times. Now, when they came here from Italy, a lot of the details are foggy at this point, because those days nobody really cared. Nobody wrote anything down and kept meticulous records. You just got to go by whatever records, you could pick up whatever you have. But you got to figure this was early 1900s. I would say in the, another garbage pail out in the middle of the street. Probably in the 1910s, I would say. When they came here, this is my mother's side now, my mother's mother and father. Somehow they wound up in Pennsylvania. Now my grandfather, unskilled labor, obviously, he didn't speak English. My mother told me he was a fireman, but not a fireman like a fire truck going around putting out fires. He was a fireman shoveling coal into the furnaces, that type of fireman. Now exactly where and what, I have no idea, but since it was Pennsylvania, and I never did research this, I should research this. They lived, from what I know, in Lewistown, which is a little tiny town in Pennsylvania. And I can only assume he worked in a steel mill. Now, I never really researched to see if there were any steel mills, near Lewistown. I mean, it couldn't have been too far away. They certainly didn't have cars. And again, I don't know the intimate details, but anyway, they lived basically very, very rural. I mean, think about, first of all, it's a little town today. In the 1910s in Pennsylvania, Lewistown was like really tiny. And supposedly, one night, it had snowed. My grandmother was all alone in the house. So, for her to be alone, this has to be, early on. From what I know, she was alone. I mean, she might have had an infant. I don't know. But she certainly didn't have kids running around. It was just basically her. And it had snowed, so there was this, coating of snow. And she heard something come up to the house and bang on the door. And she went to the door. Who's this? Nobody's answering. So they weren't answering, so naturally she was spooked. And this thing was banging on the door, and I don't know if she heard it cross the roof, walk across the roof. And naturally, it would scare the hell out of anybody in the middle of Pennsylvania in them days by yourself. And supposedly when my grandfather got home, she told him, and when they went out and looked the next day, they saw the footprints. They didn't know what it was, and they wrote it off as being a werewolf. Well, this is, again, whatever reason they thought it was that, I have no idea. Maybe there was something going on in the neighborhood, who knows. But that was supposedly a werewolf. And, for it to be notable enough to become a story, it had to be something, more than somebody just knocking on the door. That's why, you gotta, take this from where it comes. It wasn't just somebody knocking. There was something that spooked my grandmother. Something about this, whether she heard growling, I have no idea, because the intimate details have been lost to time. Another one, same grandmother. This is my grandmother, again, my mother's mother. Way back before my mother was born. My mother was born in 1922. And before my mother was born, my grandmother had a little boy. In fact, he might have been the first of the children. Because my mother had sisters and a brother. I think this might have been, again, in the early days. The baby boy contracted measles when he was 2 years old, and they killed him. Now, again, even today measles can be dangerous if they're not treated. So think about, maybe 1917, 1916, things were really kind of primitive back then. If a kid got measles, it was not a good thing, and this baby died. And my grandmother used to mourn the baby constantly, crying. And she had this big dresser. And then you open up the two big doors, and just listening to that roaring sound, that's the wind. It's supposed to be 50-mile-an-hour winds tonight. Anyway, it was like what would you call it? Like an armoire, I guess, with the two big doors that you open, and in the bottom, she used to keep the baby's clothes, and she would take the baby's clothes out, smell them and cry and all this baloney. And one day she went to do this, and she opened up the two doors, and there was somebody standing. She says it was like a man standing in there with a white sheet over his head, just a white figure. That's all it was white. And it scared the dickens out of her, and she took the baby's clothes and burned them. She figured what she was doing, she was not, in her words, the baby wasn't resting in peace. That was the baby's ghost in the closet. That's why it had the white sheet over its head, I guess. Or whatever ghost it was, that's what she said she saw in there. And it scared the heck out of her. And that's it, she burned the baby's clothes, and that was the end of that. So those are just two stories. I guess ghost or spook related. Anyhow, we're riding along Highland Boulevard here. I guess we'll try to get to a more remote part of Staten Island. I want to time it so my cigar is done when I get home. Pretty dead out. It's a Wednesday night. Yeah, it's a Wednesday night. Not a car around. Josephine's in the back playing her videos. makes more videos than Cecil B. DeMille. She makes a lot of her own videos. And then she uploads them to whatever, and then she watches them while she's out in the car. So other than that, I don't really have any ghost stories. The other night, when it was Halloween night, that show Coast to Coast AM, that's a riot, that show. The stuff that they put on there, man, you know, and you never can tell what's true, what ain't true. Some of this stuff is like way out. All I know is personally I've never seen a ghost. I don't want to see one, but I never have, regardless. Nothing spooky, nothing unusual. Incredible coincidences, but other than that, the most incredible coincidence that happened recently is this friend of mine who lives in Florida. Talk to him all the time on the phone. I never, ever speak to him during quote-unquote evening hours. There's a car, I can't believe it. Very, very rare, even if I speak to him at 5 o'clock in the afternoon. It's usually 12 noon, 11 in the morning, 1 in the afternoon, middle of the day. Why? I don't know why, it's just the way it is. Usually at night I'm busy anyway, so that's why I don't get to call him at night. In the daytime I'm goofing around, and he's goofing around, and it's usually when we talk. Or when I go out and drive out to see Michelle, while I'm sitting in Bell Parkway traffic for an hour and a half, or an hour, I'll call him up and talk on the phone. But never, ever at night. So about a month ago, taking Josephine for one of her rides. I actually pulled over. I was going to call him. When I looked at the clock, it was like, I don't know, I think it was like 20 after 8 at night, which is way out of character, you know, for us to speak on the phone at that time. But I literally pulled over, picked up the phone, brought up his number. I was just getting ready to hit send, and I said, forget about it. I started to drive away. I was going to call somebody else. I started to drive away. I did not even drive 30 seconds to a minute, and he called me. Now, what are the chances of that? And I even told him, as soon as I answered the phone, the first words out of my mouth was, "Why did you call me?" And he's laughing. He says, "I know better than." I says, "Yeah, but it's after 8 o'clock and we don't talk at this time." And I told him what happened, and he's just laughing. He couldn't believe it. Now, how do you figure these things? Just things you can't explain. But nothing spooky. Nothing spooky. It's interesting, but it's not spooky. So does that mean there's telepathy? And I can't tell you how many times that's happened to me. Another time, I was literally going to pick the phone up to call somebody, and I go to grab the phone, and the phone rang, and it was who I was going to call. How you doing, Boobala? Doing good?
Good.
Let's see something around. Say hello.
Hello, Daddy.
Hi, say hello, everybody. We're gonna make a video for YouTube. Okay?
Yes.
All right, let's flip it around. Yeah, so interesting things happen. Anyway, we're down Highland Boulevard right now. We're getting close. This is all rebuilt over here. All these stores and shit. We're getting close to Newdorp Lane, I guess. Yeah, Newdorp Lane. Getting closer to the bridge. from the other side of the family, I don't think there's any ghost stories. There's nothing. Nothing weird. Not even my aunts, my uncles, nothing I can remember anyway. No strange stories. We lived in that old house in Brooklyn. It was built in 1905. But my grandmother had it most of the time. She bought it in 1929. Interestingly, and I didn't even know this. I was just researching on the internet, you know, the family name, the street address, blah, 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 where I grew up in Brooklyn. And I see a notice from a newspaper from the I think it was 1933 or 38, I can't remember, but it was from the 1930s. I got a copy of it in the computer, where it was a legal notice that the house was going to go up for sale for non-payment of the mortgage. In other words, they were foreclosing on it. I couldn't believe it. I never heard of this. No one ever told me this. So, you know, being the youngest of the cousins, I have cousins a lot older than me, so I called one of them and I mentioned that, oh yeah, I know about that. I said, you're kidding me. I said, you know and I don't. I said, well, what's the story? And she says they couldn't afford to keep the house. It was a one-family house at the time. Big house. So my grandmother's brother, which is this cousin that I called, it was actually her grandfather. He told my grandmother the only way you're going to make it is to convert it to a two-family and use the rent to pay the mortgage. And that's what she did. That's why it was a two-family house. It was converted to a two-family house. And they did the conversion, my uncles. My grandmother had four brothers. And two or three of them, I think, maybe even four of them, were into, you know, like they could fix anything. They could build a house if they had to. So they did the conversion. In fact, when my grandmother bought the house in 29, it had no electricity. It had gas light. She put the electricity in. And the lady next door let them use her electric to power the power tools. Yeah, these are the old stories. They tend to get lost. So we were in that house from 29, I want to say till 78 or 79, something like that. Just about 50 years, 49, 50 years. That's when the neighborhood really started to deteriorate. It was getting too dangerous. We were murdering people in the corner. I mean, it was just getting too dangerous. But when I was a kid, it was a gorgeous neighborhood. When I was in grammar school in the 1960s, sometimes as a treat, school was only a block away. I used to come home for lunch. My mother would give me $1, and I'd go to the luncheonette right on the corner, next to the butcher. The butcher was on the corner, and the luncheonette was right next to it. Get 2 hamburgers, chocolate malted, and a bag of M&Ms. And I'd still have a nickel left over. Yep. Hamburgers were like, I don't know, 35 cents each, 30 cents. 82 of them. The malted, they used to get, you know, the big metal thing, loaded. Used to get like a glass and a half. They'd give you the big glass with the straw, at least a glass and a half of malted. So we're down Howland Boulevard. mother. All right. Just knocked the phone down. I had to put it back up. Booba, it's a nice quiet night. It ain't as windy as they said it was going to be anyway. It's windy, but it ain't that bad.
Made some arrangements, and I decided I'm not coming in today, I'm coming in tomorrow. So I went in the next day, and I spent 5 weeks in Northwestern Chicago, and then I went back 3 more times.
That's that station, Coast to Coast Radio. Never knows what they're talking about tonight. Sometimes they talk about normal stuff, but not usually. Seaview Avenue. To the right is where there is Staten Island Hospital. Oh, I got another strange story for you. With our 2 kids. As you know, obviously, they're both autistic, Josephine and Michelle, severely autistic. They communicate to a certain degree, but there's certain things they can't communicate. It's hard to explain, but it's just certain things that they can't express. So we moved in our house in 1989. Small house, very small house. There's 2 bedrooms upstairs. And we used to use 1 bedroom for us. And the other bedroom I used for storage. I used to put the stereo equipment up there. Loads of stereo equipment, the radios, all sorts of stuff. So when Susan got pregnant with Josephine, that was in, let me think, 1999, because she was born in April of 2000, so in 1999. So we decided, okay, we're going to fix up the spare bedroom upstairs, get all the stuff out of it, fix it all up for the baby. So in the early days when we first brought her home, we had her in the living room downstairs. My wife slept downstairs. She didn't feel comfortable sleeping in the bed after she had the baby. And there was no room really upstairs for the bassinet. We got tiny rooms, tiny bedroom. So we had the bassinet in the living room, and she slept, I don't know, she slept on, I think even I slept on the couch. She slept in a recliner, I really don't remember. But I know we were downstairs. So we fixed up the room upstairs, painted it, put in a beautiful bed, bought a crib, got a crib, moved her from the bassinet to the crib, and the crib was upstairs. The minute this kid, Josephine, was able to crawl out of the crib, she would crawl out of the crib in the middle of the night and come charging into our room. Do a swan dive onto the bed and jump under the covers between the 2 of us. And that was it. She wouldn't leave. She didn't want to sleep in the room. Once in a while she would, but a lot of times she'd bail out and come running in our room. And do a swan. This is even before we knew she was autistic. It was very early. So, time went on. She started doing this, pretty consistently. Then Michelle was born. And I don't, for some reason, I don't remember where Josephine was sleeping then, but I don't know how this arrangement came to be, but I think she was sleeping by herself in our bed, and me and my wife were sleeping downstairs in the living room. I don't know why, but I think that's what happened. When Michelle came along, same routine, the bassinet, the crib, and we bought this beautiful bunk bed. It was a full-size bed on the bottom and a twin on the top. So in other words, it could technically sleep 3 people, as opposed to just a regular bunk bed. Really, really nice. Brand new wall-to-wall carpeting. We put a computer in there for them. And Michelle would get night terrors almost every single night. She would wake up screaming at the top of her lungs. I'd run upstairs, and she'd be staring into space, screaming. And I'd calm her down, and she'd go back to sleep, and usually she'd make it through the rest of the night. I don't remember if she would ever do it twice in one night, but she would do it almost every night. Every night. And she didn't want to sleep up there. She wanted to come downstairs. So eventually, we were like, okay. We started letting her sleep on the sofa downstairs, and never had another night terror. She never, ever had a night terror while sleeping downstairs. And then a couple of times I noticed, all during this time period now, which is, maybe a year or two or something like that. All during this period, many times I'd go upstairs. There's nobody up there. I'd go upstairs and I would smell crap. And I'm looking around, I'm like, what the hell? And I asked my wife, I says, was my daughter up here? Was Josephine up here? She says, no. I figured she'd come upstairs and she'd pass gas or something. Nobody. And then it would go away. And, we always meant to get the house blessed, because I figured there's got to be something with that room upstairs. Neither one of these kids likes that room. And it got to the point where we would ask Michelle, do you want to sleep upstairs? We used to say the big bed, because it was a big bed. It was a full-size bed. She used to sleep on the bottom. No. She'd go, no. Like, as if we were asking her to do something terrible. Something that she really didn't like. And so there was something up there bugging her. Now, are they sensitive to something that we're not? Who knows? Maybe. You never can tell. But she didn't want anything to do with that room. Downstairs, no problem. She never slept in our bed for some reason. She just never did. But the living room, no problem. Slept like a baby. All night long. All right, the phone just fell out of the holder. Anyway, like I was saying, once she stopped sleeping in that room, no more trouble. Now, after this period, she never slept upstairs again. She always slept in the living room. That was it. Until she moved to the group home. She's never left the living room. Had nothing to do with her meltdowns, by the way. We're talking something completely different. We're talking a night terror. It's a completely different thing. Never, ever had another night terror. Now, a few years after this night terror stuff, I don't know, maybe she was, I don't know, she might have been 10. I'm guessing she might have been 10. I was at the post office, working at the post office. And I had to do a job, a Fisher console, for this guy that lived in Brooklyn. He was, I think he used to be a senator at one time. His name was Bill Giordano. He lived in Brooklyn. He was 92 years old. And, you know, I told him about the kids and this stuff. We were talking. He seemed like he wanted to shoot the breeze a little bit. I guess he was bored or whatever. Showing me pictures of his political career. He lived with his sister who was in her 80s. And his sister's like, oh, stop boring him with that stuff. I says, no, he's not boring me. I says, you know, I want to see this stuff. And I remember he had, I think he just had the beginnings of Parkinson's disease. And he needed help with the DVD player. He didn't know how to work it. He had a DVD about Parkinson's he wanted to watch. So I showed him how to, you know, do it. And I repaired his Fisher. He needed a volume control. I had to take the chassis out and bring it home, rebuild it, bring it back, blah, blah, blah. So, and I knew they were Catholic because I saw, you know, a picture he had on top of the console that I was working on. He had a religious picture on there. And he was, and, you know, I told him how we did the first special needs Holy Communion on Staten Island and all this stuff. And just as I completed the job, he says to me, he says, you know something? He says, I have something that I want to give to you. He says, it's a first-class relic. He says, in my career, I acquired 3 of them. And it's time to give them away. He says, and I'm inspired as who to give them to. He says, I gave one away already. He says, and I'm going to give you the second one. And I was like, oh, you know, thank you very much. And he gave me this little reliquary. It's about the size of a quarter. And it has a relic of St. Gennaro, along with the documentation from the Vatican. You know, the authentication, whatever you want to call it. The document, because you got to have the documentation along with the relic. Well, I guess you don't have to, but it certainly helps. So I brought this home, which I still have. And from the time I put it in, I kept it in our bedroom. And I got holy water, and I started sprinkling both rooms with holy water. And I never smelt the crap again. But then again, they never slept in the room again either, but all you had to do was mention it to Michelle. She didn't want any part of it. So I have the relic in my room till this day. I'm going to find a home for it. I got to get a church, maybe St. Patrick's in the city, I don't know, because it's a very important relic. I mean, St. Gennaro. And donate it to the church. But since I've had it, not the slightest problem, no smells, no nothing. So who knows? Who knows? Now we're at the end of Highland Boulevard. The old days, I do believe this was called Pennsylvania Avenue. I think it had another name. I can't remember. Because there's the Alice Austin house right here on the right. And I have a piece of her mail, being, you know, the collector I am. Got a piece of her mail from the days before this was called Highland Boulevard. Bubba, look at the river.
Water?
Yeah, the water. There's Manhattan. That might be Jersey all the way out there. Yeah, this is the end of the island. Verrazano Bridge is off behind us. And this road basically goes around along the water. Yeah, so who knows? Supposedly children have a sensitivity to these things. And, you know, these 2 kids, you know, I mean, they're amazing kids, especially this one, Josephine, the things that she does. You know, they're far from stupid, I'll tell you that. very intelligent kids. They just, whatever this mystery, and it is a mystery, this autism, that's why the symbol is the puzzle piece. Whatever drives it, it's like a brick wall. But they certainly have their abilities, and heaven knows what sensitivities they have that we don't. Maybe they can detect things that we can't. Right here on the corner is the shops where they work on the trains, Clifton shops. Bubba, what are you watching?
30 seconds.
What are you watching?
Stretching.
Oh yeah, I don't know what you said. Some cartoon stretching. Stretching. That's it. Stretching, huh? Here's where the railroad crosses Bay Street. I think this is the Clifton station. We're close to the ferry. To the left here is the old Bailey Seton Hospital, which I don't know what they're doing with it now. It's always lit up. I don't know what's going on in there. This is Bay Street. Cleaned up a lot down here. There's some fancy restaurants now. All sorts of stuff. It's not the greatest, but it's certainly a lot better than it was. And down here, a few blocks on the left, is where the old Harley dealer used to be, Lombardi. That's where I bought the motorcycles from. Long gone. Now there's a big fancy dealer up on Forest Avenue. He had a nice little shop here. It's right there on the left, that white building. All gone. Somebody on their scooter. This area pretty much is Stapleton / St. George. Of course, they call it the St. George Ferry Terminal, which is up around the bend over here. This is Victory Boulevard we're going to cross. here on the left is the building I used to have to come to check in when my brilliant wife got me in trouble, accusing me of, not she wasn't accusing me, but she tells the cops that I was hitting Michelle. So we had to call the cops one day because Michelle was, being rambunctious. And I wound up getting arrested. I used to have to come down here to check in. And on the left here is the building that I spent in prison for one night. Isn't that great? Ferry terminal's right here on the right. And the lockup is on the left. The this police station here with the prison cells. There's a prison here. Well, I guess it's a holding prison. Sat in there all friggin' night long in a tiny cell with two derelicts. The stink was incredible in that place. Listening to the ferry leave every half hour, you hear the ferry horn blow. Before they take off, they toot the horn. That's how I knew another half hour went by. Anyway, I don't want to regurgitate that. I don't want to forget it. Couldn't go home for a month. I had to live with a friend of mine. Well, that's my brilliant wife. So this becomes now Bay Terrace. Where it exactly changes to Bay Terrace, I'm not sure. I think by the ferry. I have some old postcards of a few stretches of this road from years ago. And it had what appears to be trolley tracks. They could be train tracks for all I know in them days. Because I think a train ran alongside this. Or right in the street, which they did a lot of times years ago. They call it street running. The train ran right down the middle of the street. There was hardly any cars. In fact, in 1906, there were no cars, and that's when the postcards from. Very few, 1906, very few. Especially out here, very rural, compared to the rest of the city. Eventually coming up on the left here, not here, down the road a piece, it's going to be Snug Harbor. Or did we pay? No, this is Snug Harbor. We are here, right, to the left. Snug Harbor. They got the old captain's houses and all sorts of stuff in there. Big self-storage on the left. They got more self-storage places out here. I don't know who's using them, but apparently they're in demand because they keep building them, and they're gigantic. Also down the road here, this gigantic, and I mean gigantic crane. I think we're going to pass it, yeah. So we're going to turn by the Bayonne Bridge to head back home. Not going to go all the way down. We'll save that for another time. Yeah, here's Snow Cobb. I thought it was back there. It's over here. On the left. Big place. A lot of buildings. Ooh, traffic. Yeah, right across the water here is New Jersey. This is the Arthur Kill on the left of us. All right, hear that wind. Phone company on the left. Here's a crane, but that ain't the big one. It's big, but it ain't like the big one. All along this stretch on the right, like behind that fence for instance, there's all these places that do repairs to ships, propellers, all this stuff. They recondition propellers, replace propellers. Where's that big crane? It's lit. I don't see it here. Maybe they're using it somewhere. It's not here. It's always lit up. Can't miss it, and it's usually right around here. There's a giant-sized American flag flapping away. I'm surprised that crane ain't here. I wonder what they're doing with it. I mean, that thing was gigantic. On a barge. Another self-storage. Those places charge. Can't imagine what's so valuable. People need those things. Paying all that rent. close to the Bayonne Bridge soon. Surprised it's this busy down here. So it's actually very common for us to take these driving tours in the middle of the night. And Josephine can't sleep, and I'm awake. She wants to go driving around. Those are the old railroad tracks. I don't know if they use them. They might use them for the garbage train. They bring the garbage over the bridge through Jersey to wherever, Pennsylvania, North Carolina. They export the garbage now. No more landfills on Staten Island. No more landfills in the city. All the city's garbage goes bye-bye. And there in the distance is the Bayonne Bridge. Woo, it's windy. Voila, there's a bridge. Bayonne Bridge. Just past the bridge, we'll make a left. Boy, it's windy, stuff's blowing around. Huge bridge. Hard to believe they built stuff like this. This is about 1933. They built this bridge. I think it was originally called the Autism Bridge or something like that. And we're going to make a left over here. This is Morning Star Road. Which is going to bring us to Richmond Avenue. Not Richmond Road. Richmond Avenue. Two different streets, Richmond Road and Richmond Avenue. Boy, the garbage is blowing all over the place. But you're not allowed to use bags anymore, supposedly. I still see bags. I actually use cans only. This Bayonne Bridge we just passed has a twin in Sydney, Australia. But this one, they had to raise it, which destroyed the look, if you ask me. They raised it to allow these mega container ships to bring more stuff in from China. They didn't fit under the bridge. They had to raise the bridge. We just finished it a couple of years ago. It took them years. Must have passed 1,000,000 speed cameras, red light cameras. I got the app off because I'm driving slow. Normally I leave the app on. It tells you when the cameras are coming up. I hear wind chimes. They're certainly going to be blowing tonight. Boy, stuff blowing all over the place. And we are crossing Forest Avenue. Now this is Richmond Avenue where it starts. There's the big shop right on the left. One of 4 that we have that are open 24 hours. There's a cigar shop in this parking lot, all sorts of stuff. Police precinct on the right. Now on the right here is an old cemetery. It's been here many, many years. On the left is residential. And up until the 1950s, I think the late 50s or even into the 60s, it was all farmland. This was a 2-lane road. In fact, I have a postcard of this when it was a 1-lane road. But this was a small street. 1 lane going, 1 lane coming, right through the middle of now this area. Both sides were farmland. Now it's all houses. When we moved here in 89, no, I moved here in 84, 83, 84, something like that. Population was 350,000. Now it's like 490 something, just shy of 500,000. It's something like the population of the entire state of Wyoming. The only difference is Staten Island's a lot smaller. This is the Staten Island Expressway we're going to go under right now. On the left is this big, I think now it's an assisted living. It used to be a Holiday Inn many, many years ago. Then it was a Staten Island hotel. And now it's an assisted living. Left here is this huge Christian church. I remember when it was just a field of grass. Yeah, I saw a lot of building going on out here. Here's a car. Now we're going to cross Victory Boulevard. Now at this intersection here of Victory and Richmond Avenue, supposedly many, many years ago. It was the Bull's Head Tavern. So this area now is called Bull's Head. To the right there's some houses over here, but you get to a point where it's nothing but marshland. In fact, to the right, if you take this road called Travis through the marsh, that area used to be called marshland. In fact, it was a post office. It was actually a postmark called marshland. Then it went to, I don't know if it was the same post office or a close by post office. Before it was called Travis. It was called Linoleumville, because that's where the factory was that used to make linoleum. This guy that invented linoleum, I think he was a British guy. He came over here to make his fortune. And it was such a big place that they actually named the post office. There's a postmark, Linoleumville. And then after it closed, the locals voted to go back to the name of Travis, which is what it is today. Of course, there are no more local postmarks. It's all been combined now into the three boroughs, Staten Island, Brooklyn, and Queens. It's the same postmark. We no longer have our own postmark. They call it the tri-borough postmark, something like that. And this is Travis. You would make the right here and go out to where I said marshland used to be. And it's hard to believe this used to be a two-lane road. This was expanded when they built the mall, which everybody loves, our mall, which is down the road a piece. To the right is nothing but marshland now. Now we're just crossing Forest Hill Road. And off to the right, way off to the right, is what used to be the largest landfill, I think in the country. I don't know. It's huge. Fresh Kills landfill. It's been closed for years now. That's off to the right, way out into the gigantic, way out into the distance. And of course to the left is the mall. Huge Staten Island mall, theater, you name it. All kinds of stores. And the whole mall area used to be Floyd Bennett. I think it was Floyd Bennett Airport. I can't remember now. It ain't Miller Field. That's down Newdorf. I think it was Floyd Bennett Airport. I can't remember. But I know it was an airport. And Floyd Bennett actually tested airplane skis here at one point in the 1930s. I have a piece of mail addressed to him in Staten Island when he was here. And it's literally a couple of, I think 3 or 4 months before he died. Costco on the left, This Costco has their own gas station. Tire shop, gas station. Now to the right, back to marshland. In fact, to the left is marshland. And there's this bridge that goes over this little river. I think it's the Kilvan Cove. When we moved out here, this was a 2-lane road, and there was a drawbridge. Now it's a permanent fixed bridge because they no longer have barges coming in and out with the garbage. They used to have garbage barges when the Brookville landfill was open. This overpass is abandoned. This is part of the parkway that never was. It was supposed to be the Willowbrook Expressway, which I mentioned in the last video. It's something that we're going to, thank God they stopped it. It was going to go through a lot of residential areas, and it was going to connect over here. But since they stopped it, that was it. It ends a quarter of a mile down the road, and this is all abandoned, this part of it. So the last time we hit the, I guess the southern end of Staten Island, we went out towards Tottenville. This time we went in the opposite direction towards St. George and the bridge. We worked our way back on Artikill Road, heading home. Next time we're going to try to hit way out the North Shore, Port Ivory, which is named after the factory where they used to make ivory soap, which is long gone. They named it Port Ivory. It's where the container ships come in and stuff. And Howland Hook Terminal, which is another place where containers are loaded and unloaded on these big ships. Yeah, like I said in the other video, to the left is the old Brookville landfill, which has been closed since like 1980. It's a park now. Go in there, ride your bike, I guess your scooter, whatever. Drive in there. I don't think there's really a lot going on in there. Just to recreate. And that is that for tonight. It is now just about 4:15 in the morning. And that is that for this tour. Oh shit, over here I gotta turn. I don't even know what block I live on anymore. These cars are going out at this time. And that's that. I hope you enjoyed this as much as we did. And until next time, what do you say, Boobala? Wait a minute.
Hello, Daddy.
That's it for today. What do you say? Say good night.
Bye-bye, everybody.
See you next time.
See you next time.
All right. Love you.